Israel Wade was 42 years old, and until that Tuesday evening, he believed his marriage, though cold, was still his to save. He drove a modest truck, lived in a tasteful but unremarkable Atlanta home, managed what his wife Patrice described to her friends as a decent little career. She had been saying things like that for 2 years. Small, habitual cuts, delivered with the ease of someone who had already decided what her husband was worth. That evening, Israel came home to find Patrice standing in the living room holding documents she had found in his office, LLC registrations, property deeds, corporate filings she could not read correctly. She looked at him the way people look at something they have already decided to discard. Then she said it, clearly, without hesitation, without looking back. "Israel, I am too good for you. I have always been too good for you." She picked up her bag, walked to the front door, opened it, and without turning around, extended her middle finger toward the man she was leaving behind. What Patrice Wade did not know, what she had never once bothered to find out in 8 years of marriage, was that the man she just dismissed was worth $300 million, and she was about to find out exactly what that meant. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The kitchen was still dark when Israel Wade sat down at the table. 5:30 in the morning. The only light came from the small lamp above the stove, casting a warm circle across the oak surface where his documents lay in neat stacks. Black coffee in a plain white mug. No sugar, no cream. The same way he'd taken it for 20 years. He turned a page, then another. His eyes moved across the numbers with the focus of a man reading scripture. Careful, practiced, reverent. These were not the kind of documents most people would understand. Holding company filings, quarterly distributions, a lease renewal for a warehouse in Savannah that generated more revenue in a month than most people earned in a year. Israel Wade was 42 years old. He sat in a kitchen that cost less than what he made before lunch on any given Tuesday. This was intentional, all of it. The house was nice, good neighborhood, hardwood floors, updated appliances, a backyard with mature trees that gave shade in the Georgia summers. It was the kind of home a senior manager might own. A man with a solid career and a decent 401k. Nothing more. Nothing that would make anyone look twice. He turned another page. A distribution summary from a holding company registered in Delaware. The numbers were large enough to make a banker's hands shake. Israel read them the way most men read a grocery list. Outside, the sky was still black. A mockingbird started up somewhere in the neighbor's magnolia tree. Too early, confused by the porch light. Israel listened to it for a moment, then returned to his work. He was 14 when he learned the lesson that built his life. His father, Emmett Wade, had owned a trucking company in Memphis. Small operation, 6 trucks, 12 employees, enough to put food on the table and pay for the house on Bellevue Boulevard. Emmett was proud of that company, the way a man is proud of something he made with his hands and his time and his refusal to quit. Then came the lawsuit. A business partner, a man Emmett had trusted, had eaten dinner with, had called friend, filed a civil action claiming ownership of assets that were never his. The case was weak. Everyone knew it was weak, but Emmett's name was on everything. Every truck, every contract, every bank account. His life was visible from every angle, and the lawsuit used that visibility like a map. By the time the legal fees were done, there was nothing left. Not the trucks, not the house, not Emmett's health, which broke under the weight of it and never came back. Israel was 14. He watched it happen in real time. He watched his father's face change, watched the pride drain out of it like color leaving a photograph. He made himself a promise that year, a quiet one, the kind a boy makes in his chest, not out loud. Nobody will ever see what I have. Nobody will ever use what I built as a weapon against me. He kept that promise for 28 years. At 8:15, the sound of heels on the staircase. Israel did not look up immediately. He closed the folder, a plain manila folder, nothing remarkable, and placed it beneath a stack of utility bills. By the time Patrice reached the bottom of the stairs, the table held nothing but his coffee and a copy of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution he hadn't read. She was dressed in a cream silk blouse and tailored pants, gold earrings, her hair freshly pressed. The kind of outfit that said, "I have somewhere to be," without saying where. She didn't say where. "Morning," she said. Her voice was flat. Pleasant, the way hotel lobbies are pleasant. Designed, impersonal. "Morning." He took a sip of his coffee. She moved through the kitchen without stopping, opened the refrigerator, took out a bottle of water, closed it. Her movements were efficient. A woman passing through a room she did not consider his. "You know," she said, and the tone shifted, just slightly, just enough. "Marcus Henderson got promoted to VP last month. Public announcement. LinkedIn feature." She paused, screwing the cap off the water bottle. "I'm just saying. You've been at the same level for how long now? Maybe it's time to think about something with more visibility." She said it the way she always said these things. Casual. Like it wasn't a knife. Like she was offering helpful advice to a man who needed it. Israel looked at her. His face revealed nothing. "I'll think about it," he said. She didn't notice the way his jaw tightened. She never noticed. She had never once, in 8 years of marriage, looked at him closely enough to see what lived beneath the stillness. "I have lunch today," she said, picking up her handbag from the counter. "Enjoy it." She walked to the door. No pause at the table. No hand on his shoulder. No kiss. The door opened. The door closed. The house went quiet. Israel sat in that quiet for exactly 30 seconds. Then he pulled the manila folder back out from under the utility bills and opened it again. Their marriage had been cold for 2 years. Not dead. Cold. The kind of cold that happens when one person has already left but hasn't yet said so. He knew what the lunch was. He knew who the lunch was with. He had known for 4 months. He had been patient. He had been preparing. His phone buzzed at 8:47, a 404 number he knew by heart. "Morning," Brendan's voice said. Low, easy, professional. "Morning." A pause. Then, "Everything's in place." 2 words, 3 syllables. 4 months of legal architecture compressed into a single confirmation. Israel said, "Good. You need anything else before Thursday?" "No. I'll call you if that changes." "All right, then." The line went dead. Israel finished his coffee. He washed the mug in the sink, dried it, and placed it back in the cabinet, handle facing left, the way he always did. He gathered his documents into a leather portfolio, plain and scuffed at the corners. He put on his jacket, a dark canvas work jacket, clean but unremarkable. He locked the front door behind him and walked to his truck. A black Ford F-150, 3 years old, well-maintained. The kind of vehicle a foreman might drive. A site manager, a man who works with his hands. The drive took 19 minutes, east on I-20, then south toward an office park near the airport. The complex was 3 beige buildings surrounded by parking lots and chain-link fence. A logistics company occupied one building, an insurance brokerage another. The third had no signage at all, just a suite number stenciled in small black letters on the glass door. Israel parked in a spot that had no name painted on the curb. He walked through the glass door, nodded to the receptionist, a woman named Diane, who had worked for him for 9 years, and continued down a carpeted hallway to a room where 14 people sat at desks, managing operations that spanned 4 states, warehouse networks, municipal freight contracts, commercial real estate holdings, a logistics system that moved goods for companies whose names appeared on the sides of buildings downtown. His name appeared nowhere on this building. It appeared on no building. It never had. Israel Wade set his portfolio on his desk sat down, and began his day. The house was quiet when he opened the front door at 6:42 p.m., but it was the wrong kind of quiet. Israel knew the difference. There was the quiet of an empty house, the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the hallway clock, the settling of wood in walls, and there was this, the quiet of someone waiting. He saw her before he finished closing the door. Patrice stood in the center of the living room, not sitting, standing. Her arms were at her sides, and in her right hand she held a stack of papers, maybe 20 pages, printed, some of them creased where she had gripped them too hard. On the coffee table behind her, more documents were spread out. He recognized them from across the room. LLC registrations, property deeds, corporate filing confirmations, pages from the folder he kept in the bottom drawer of his home office desk, the drawer with no lock, because a lock would invite curiosity. She had gone looking, and she had found exactly what he left to be found. "Sit down," she said. He didn't sit. He set his portfolio by the door and stood in the entryway, hands loose at his sides. He watched her face. It was not the face of a woman who was hurt. It was not the face of a woman who was confused. It was the face of a woman who believed she had caught him. "You want to explain these?" She lifted the pages slightly, a gesture of accusation. "Shell companies, Israel? LLCs I've never heard of? Property in, what? Savannah? Birmingham?" She shook her head slowly. "How long have you been hiding money from me?" He said nothing. "I'm your wife." The word came out sharp, not with love, with ownership. "And you've been keeping accounts I didn't know about. Small accounts, side deals, whatever this is." She dropped the papers onto the couch like they were dirty. "Who does that?" She had looked at the documents. She had seen company names, addresses, filing numbers, but she could not read what they meant. She saw the frame. She missed the painting entirely. She thought this was a man hiding $50,000, maybe $100. She had no idea she was holding the edge of $300 million. "I want a divorce." The words landed in the room like something dropped from a height. Israel did not move. "I've wanted one for over a year," she continued. Her voice was steady now, rehearsed. She had practiced this. Maybe in the mirror, maybe in her car, maybe in a bed that wasn't in this house. "I have been settling, Israel, for years. Settling for this house. Settling for your—" She waved her hand vaguely, a gesture that encompassed him, his jacket, his truck, his life, your contentment, your smallness. She picked up her handbag from the arm of the chair. A designer bag, one he had paid for without comment, as he had paid for everything without comment. "I filed this afternoon. My attorney will be in touch with yours." She straightened her blouse, drew herself up to her full height. "And now I find out you've been hiding money from me on top of everything else. Unbelievable!" She walked toward the door, toward him. He stepped aside, not out of weakness, but out of the understanding that nothing he could say in this moment would matter. She had written the script. She was performing it. She stopped at the threshold, turned halfway. Her chin was lifted. Her eyes were clear and cold and certain. "Israel!" Her voice was quiet now, almost gentle. The gentleness of someone delivering a truth they believe is final. "I am too good for you. I have always been too good for you." She opened the front door. The evening air came in, warm and heavy with Georgia summer. She stepped through without looking back. And as the door swung closed, she raised her left hand behind her, fingers curled, middle finger extended, a gesture thrown over her shoulder like something discarded. The door clicked shut. The house was quiet again. The wrong kind of quiet had become a different kind of quiet. The kind that comes after. Israel stood in the entryway. He did not move for a long time. His face showed nothing. His hands were still. But somewhere deep in his chest, something settled, not broke, not cracked, settled, like a foundation finding its final position, like a structure completing itself. He walked to the couch. The papers she had left behind were scattered across the cushions. Photographs of them would be on her phone already. She thought they were evidence. She thought they were ammunition. He had no idea they were bait. He closed the folder, set it on the coffee table. Then he pulled his phone from his pocket and dialed. 1 ring. 2. She filed, Israel said. Brendan's voice came back without hesitation. No surprise, no sympathy, just readiness. I know. I've been waiting for your call. You ready? Israel looked at the closed front door, at the empty space where she had stood, at the folder on the table that held the smallest fraction of what he was. I've been ready. He ended the call, set the phone on the table beside the folder. Then he sat down in the quiet house, alone, and did not move for a very long time. The morning came the way mornings always did for Israel Wade. Early, quiet, purposeful. He sat in his home office at 6:15 a.m., coffee on the desk, the folder from last night sitting closed beside his elbow. The curtains were drawn. The room smelled like paper and old wood. He picked up his phone and called Memphis. Ruth answered on the first ring. She was always awake before him. Morning, baby. Morning, Aunt Ruth. You sound steady, she said. Not a question, an assessment. I am steady. A pause. The kind that carried weight between people who had known each other for decades. Then Ruth said, she did it then. Last night. Filed yesterday afternoon. Came home with the folder in her hand like she'd found a crime scene. Ruth made a sound. Low. Somewhere between a laugh and a sigh. The folder you left in the unlocked drawer. Yes, ma'am. And she thinks she found… what? A few accounts? Israel leaned back in his chair. The leather creaked. She thinks I've been hiding 50, maybe 100,000 on the side. She saw the LLC names, the property addresses in Savannah and Birmingham. She couldn't read past the first layer. Because she never learned how to look at you, Ruth said. Not once in 8 years. He didn't argue with that. There was nothing to argue. So she's sitting there tonight, Ruth continued, thinking she caught a man with a little nest egg. And she doesn't know about the holding companies, the trusts, the freight network contracts with the city of Atlanta, the commercial portfolio across 4 states, the equity stakes. No, $312 million. Ruth said the number the way someone says a prayer, quiet, precise, full of meaning. And that girl walked out your door with her middle finger in the air because she thought you were small. Israel said nothing. He looked at the folder, at the documents inside that represented maybe 2% of what he'd built. 2%. And she thought it was the whole picture. She never asked, he said finally. In 8 years. She never once asked how the house got paid off in 3 years. Never asked why I didn't worry about money. Never asked what I did all day in that office. She saw the truck. She saw the neighborhood. She decided what I was. Because that's all she was looking for, Ruth said. Flash. Noise. A man who performs. The line went quiet for a moment. Israel could hear Ruth's kitchen clock ticking in the background. A familiar sound from 30 years of phone calls. Then Ruth's voice changed, dropped half a register, became the voice she used when she had something important to deliver. Israel, I need to tell you something I confirmed last week. He waited. Devlin Cross, she said. It's been more than 2 years. The words landed. He had suspected. He had felt the timeline in his bones. The way Patrice's coldness had a starting point. The way her comments about his ambition began on a specific month he could almost name. But suspecting and knowing are different countries. 2 years, he repeated. At least. My friend Gloria, you remember Gloria, works at the Peachtree Athletic Club. She saw them together 26 months ago. Not recent. Not new. This started before anything changed in your house. Before the comments. Before the distance. Israel's jaw tightened. Just once. then released. She was building the story, he said. The whole last 2 years. Every time she said I lacked ambition. Every time she told me to find something with more visibility. She was writing the reason, making it make sense. So when she walked out, it looked like she was leaving a man who wasn't enough. Not a woman who'd been cheating for 2 years. That's exactly what she was doing, Ruth said. And that man, Devlin, he's not what she thinks he is either. But that's not my part to tell. Israel breathed in. Let it out slow. The anger was there, somewhere deep, somewhere contained. But it did not control him. It never had. Anger was fuel, not a steering wheel. She walked away from $300 million, he said, because she couldn't see past the truck I drive. And now she's going to find out, Ruth said. Israel sat with that for a moment. The house around him was still. Morning light pressed against the curtains. Thank you, Aunt Ruth. I love you, baby. Handle your business. He hung up, set the phone down, looked at the folder one more time. Then he picked the phone back up and dialed Brendan. 2 rings. Israel. Make the financial disclosure complete, Israel said. His voice was level. No heat, no hurry. Every asset, every holding, every number. I want her attorney to see it all at once. Brendan's office sat on the 4th floor of a building in Buckhead that looked like every other building on the block. Glass and steel. Anonymous. The kind of place serious money moved through without anyone on the street ever knowing. Israel arrived at 9:01 a.m. on a Thursday, 2 days after Patrice walked out, 2 days after the middle finger, 2 days after the phone call with Ruth that confirmed what he already felt in his chest. Brendan met him in the conference room. No receptionist, no small talk. Just 2 men at a long table with a stack of documents between them and 16 years of friendship underneath. Brendan Osei was lean, precise, and dressed like a man who billed $400 an hour because he was worth $6. His office was neat the way a surgeon's table is neat. Everything in its place, nothing wasted. He poured Israel a glass of water without asking if he wanted one. How are you sleeping? Brendan asked. Fine. Brendan looked at him, held the look for 2 seconds, then nodded. He believed him. All right. Brendan opened a folder and slid it across the table. Let's start with your friend Devlin Cross. Israel didn't touch the folder. He already knew what was inside, but he let Brendan tell it anyway. That was how they worked. Brendan built the record. Israel confirmed it. Devlin Cross, Brendan said, 44, regional real estate developer, 3 active projects, all undercapitalized. Owes 2 general contractors, one in Marietta, one in Decatur, a combined $320,000 in unpaid invoices. Both have filed civil suits. His Bentley Continental is leased through a company he doesn't fully own. His personal residence has a second mortgage taken out 11 months ago. Israel sipped his water. The Bentley. Leased. I could have told you that the first time I met him. I know. Brendan's mouth twitched, something close to a smile. But now it's documented. He flipped a page in the folder. His expression shifted, became still. Now, the joint account. Israel set his glass down. 3 wire transfers, Brendan said. All from the joint savings account you and Patrice hold at SunTrust. January 14th, $12,000. March 9th, $20,000. June 2nd, $15,000. Total, $47,000. All sent to an LLC called Crossway Capital Partners. Devlin's LLC, Israel said. Devlin's LLC. Brendan let that sit. Registered in his name. No other principals. No legitimate business activity that my forensic accountant can identify. Just a receiving vessel. Israel's hands rested flat on the table. His breathing didn't change. His face didn't move. $47,000. His money. Their money. Moved to the man she was sleeping with. Not once, in a moment of weakness. 3 times. Over 8 months. Deliberately. Carefully. like someone building a runway. She wasn't just leaving. She was funding the departure with his fuel. She was paying him, Israel said quietly. Or investing in whatever dream he sold her, Brendan said. Doesn't matter which. Under Georgia law, this is textbook dissipation of marital assets, pre-filing transfers to a romantic partner with no marital purpose. Her attorney will have no answer for this. Israel nodded once. Add it to the counter-filing. Brendan made a note, then looked up, waiting. There's something else, Israel said. Devlin's been using my name. Brendan leaned back. Tell me. 2 investors in the last year, Marcus Holly and Terrence Boyd, both told me separately that Devlin pitched them on a mixed-use development, claiming he had a strategic relationship with me. Used my name to give himself credibility he hasn't earned. Brendan's pen stopped. His eyes sharpened. Did you authorize any such representation? I've spoken to Devlin Cross exactly twice in my life, both times at industry events, both times for less than 5 minutes. Brendan was already writing. Fraudulent misrepresentation. Civil action. Separate from the divorce entirely. He looked up. This forces him to retain a second attorney. Fight a second fight. With money he doesn't have. I know, Israel said. Brendan studied him for a moment. That look again. The one that measured whether Israel was acting from anger or architecture. You sure? Brendan asked. File it. Brendan closed the folder. Consider it done. They sat for another minute. 2 old friends in a quiet room. Then Israel stood, shook Brendan's hand, and walked out without another word. The parking garage was cool and dim. His truck sat in the second row, a black Ford F-150, 5 years old, clean but not new. The truck Patrice hated. The truck, she told him, made them look regular. He climbed in, pulled the door shut, sat. The cab was quiet. His phone rested in the cup holder. He picked it up and opened his messages. There it was, a half-written text to Devlin Cross. He'd started it last night at 2 a.m. 5 words. You have no idea what... He looked at those words for 10 seconds. Then he pressed delete. The message disappeared. The screen went dark. Israel started the truck, backed out of the space, and drove home in silence. 1 week later, Patrice walked into the law offices of Dana Whitfield and Associates like a woman picking up dry cleaning. She wore cream slacks and a silk blouse the color of champagne. Her bag was new. Devlin bought it, or said he did. She checked her phone in the elevator. She smiled at the receptionist like they were old friends. She was expecting an hour, maybe less. Go through the basics. Figure out what she could claim from the joint accounts, maybe the furniture, the Lexus, some portion of whatever little stash Israel had been hiding in those shell companies. She'd already decided she wanted the dining table. It was a beautiful piece, Italian walnut. She'd picked it herself. The receptionist led her to Dana's corner office. Glass walls on 2 sides. Atlanta spread out below in the mid-morning haze. Dana was already seated. Patrice noticed it immediately. Something in the way Dana held herself. Spine straight. Hands folded on the table. No smile, no warmth. Dana Whitfield was always warm. She'd built her practice on being the attorney women trusted with their worst days. But today, her face was a closed door. Sit down, Patrice, Dana said. Something about the tone. Not unkind, but heavy. Patrice sat, set her bag on the floor beside her, crossed her legs. So, where are we? Dana didn't answer right away. She reached beside her and lifted a document, thick, bound, professionally printed, and placed it on the table between them. The cover page read, Financial Disclosure, Israel J. Wade, 67 pages. Patrice reached for it the way a person reaches for a menu, casual, expecting nothing. She flipped open the cover page. The first line beneath the header read, Total confirmed net worth. Independent audit, Rothwell and Associates, $312,000. Patrice's hand stopped. Her eyes stayed on the number. They did not move. The number did not change. $312 million. 312 million. The air in the room seemed to thicken. The glass walls felt suddenly closer. The city below kept moving, indifferent. But inside this room, time had gone strange. "I don't," Patrice started. Stopped. Her mouth was dry. "Say that again." Dana did not repeat it. She let the silence hold. She let the document do what documents do. 10 seconds passed. 15. Then Dana spoke. Measured, professional. The voice of a woman delivering news she had already spent 2 hours processing alone. Page 4 through 11. Dana said, "Logistics holding companies. 3 separate entities. Combined annual revenue north of 90 million. Page 12 through 23. Commercial real estate portfolio. Properties in Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, and Florida. 41 properties total. Pages 24 through 30. 2 private equity stakes in regional freight companies. Pages 31 through 40. A warehouse and distribution network with active municipal contracts in 6 counties." Patrice was turning pages. Her hands moved slowly, like the paper was hot, like it might burn her if she went too fast. Names she had never heard, companies she never knew existed, numbers that made the room feel unreal. "He drives a truck," she said. Her voice was small, smaller than she had ever heard it. Dana looked at her directly. "He owns the company the truck belongs to," Dana said, "and 14 others like it." Patrice set the document down. She did not close it. She stared at the open page, page 19, a list of commercial properties in Tennessee, as if she could will it to be wrong, as if looking long enough would make the numbers shrink back to something that made sense, something that fit the man she thought she'd married, the man she'd dismissed, the man she'd walked away from without looking back. Dana let 30 seconds pass. Then she opened a second folder. "There's more," she said. "And this part concerns you directly." Patrice looked up. "The 3 wire transfers from your joint savings account," Dana said. $47,000 total. Sent to an LLC controlled by Devlin Cross. His legal team has flagged these as dissipation of marital assets. Under Georgia code, pre-filing transfers to a romantic partner with no legitimate marital purpose are recoverable, and they materially weaken your negotiating position. Patrice's mouth opened. Nothing came out. "Patrice." Dana's voice was quiet, not cruel, almost gentle, but underneath it, the weight of a woman who had seen enough to know exactly what had happened here. "I want you to think very carefully about what you want to do next, because the man you left has been ready for this for a long time." Patrice did not move. The document sat open in her hands. 67 pages, $312 million, and the slow, crushing understanding, settling over her like concrete, that she had walked out of a life she never even saw. She sat motionless, the pages heavy in her hands. The city moved below. The glass walls held her reflection, and she did not recognize the woman looking back. Patrice sat in her car for 40 minutes before she made the call. The parking garage was dim, concrete and fluorescent light. Her hands rested on the steering wheel, but she wasn't driving. The engine was off. The document, all 67 pages of it, sat on the passenger seat like something alive, like something that could hear her breathing. She picked up her phone, found Israel's name, stared at it. 2 years she hadn't called him first. 2 years of letting him reach, letting him try, letting him fill the silence while she looked past him toward something she thought was better. Now her thumb hovered over his name like it was a prayer. She pressed it. He answered on the second ring. "Patrice." His voice was the same. That was the thing that hit her hardest. No anger, No smugness, no victory lap. Just her name, said in that low, even way he always said it. Like nothing had changed. Like she hadn't walked out of his house with her middle finger raised and her chin high, and her certainty wrapped around her like armor. Israel. She softened her voice, let it drop into the register she used to use on Sunday mornings when the light came through their bedroom windows and she wanted something. I think things moved too fast. Between us, the way I left, the way I said things. Silence on his end. Not cold, just still. She pressed forward. I want to understand what we built. Together. I want to sit down and talk about this. About everything. I think we owe each other that. More silence. She could hear him breathing. Steady. Unhurried. Israel. Patrice. Same tone. Same name. Same calm. I'm going to let my attorney handle it from here. The line went dead. She pulled the phone from her ear and looked at the screen. Call ended. 12 seconds. That was all she got. 12 seconds and a closed door. Quiet as the one she'd slammed on her way out. Her chest tightened. She pressed her palm flat against it like she could push the feeling back down. Then she called Devlin. He picked up on the first ring. He always did. Baby, how'd it go? Devlin. Her voice cracked. She didn't mean for it to. He's worth $300 million. A pause. 1 beat. 2. Say that number again. 312 million. She could hear herself say it and still not believe it. Logistics companies, real estate, warehouses, everything. It's Dev. It's everywhere. 4 states, municipal contracts. He owns. Which assets are liquid? Devlin's voice had changed. Sharper. Faster. The softness was gone. The honey he usually poured over his words when he spoke to her. Now he sounded like a man doing math. Patrice, focus. The real estate portfolio. Is it held personally or through the trusts? Did her disclosure break it down by entity? She blinked. What? The properties. Are they in holding companies? Because if any of them are jointly titled or acquired during the marriage, those are marital assets regardless of Devlin. She said his name and he didn't hear it. The structure and the private equity stakes, are those premarital or did he acquire during? Because if they grew substantially during the marriage, you've got an appreciation argument even if… Devlin. Stop. He stopped. The silence was different than Israel's. Israel's silence had been a wall. Solid. Complete. Devlin's silence was the silence of a man who realized he'd shown too much of his hand. Sorry, baby. The honey was back. Slow and practiced. I'm thinking about you. About your position. I want to make sure you're protected. She stared through the windshield at the concrete wall of the parking garage. Something was settling in her stomach. Cold and heavy. Have you talked to a different attorney? He asked. Someone who handles high-net-worth cases specifically? Because Dana's fine for standard divorces. But this is… I have to go, Patrice said. She hung up before he could answer. The call between Brendan and Israel came at 9:47 that night. Israel was in his home office. The house was quiet. He had eaten alone, grilled chicken, rice, the same meal he'd made 100 times. The folder was no longer on his desk. He'd filed it. It had served its purpose. Got something? Brendan said. No greeting. They didn't need one. Go ahead. Devlin Cross reached out to Marcus Tate and Reggie Fontaine this week. Both times he introduced himself as a potential strategic partner in your portfolio restructuring following the divorce. His exact words to Reggie were, "Hold on." The sound of paper. I'm going to be closely involved in the real estate side going forward. Wanted to open a line of communication. Israel said nothing. Marcus called me directly, Brendan continued. Asked if he should be concerned. I told him no. Reggie forwarded the email. Israel leaned back in his chair. The ceiling above him was plain white. Simple, like everything he built. Nothing on the surface, everything underneath. He never wanted her, Israel said. He wanted access, a beat. Does she know? Brendan asked. Israel thought about the 12-second phone call, the shift in her voice, the softness she'd tried to put on like a costume that no longer fit. She's starting to. The filing hit the court record at 9:14 a.m. Brendan had been at his desk since 6, reviewing every line one final time. The counter-motion was clean, tight. 12 pages that told a story of money moving in one direction, out of a marriage, and into the hands of a man who had no right to it. 3 transfers, 3 dates, 3 amounts, $12,000, $18,500, $16,500, all routed to Pinnacle South Development, LLC, Devlin Cross's company, if you could call a shell with no real assets a company. The word in the filing was dissipation. It meant waste. It meant one spouse draining the marital pot for their own benefit while the marriage still existed on paper. In Georgia courts, it meant Patrice would answer for every dollar. Brendan signed the filing, handed it to his paralegal, and picked up the second folder. This one was thicker, 23 pages. A civil action against Devlin Cross for fraudulent misrepresentation. Specifically, his use of Israel Wade's name and implied business relationship to attract investor capital. 2 sworn statements from Marcus Tate and Reggie Fontaine. 1 forwarded email chain. 1 recorded voicemail Devlin had left Marcus 3 weeks prior, casual and confident, referencing my relationship with Israel's portfolio. Brendan filed it in a separate court. Different case number, different judge, different fight entirely. This was the architecture Israel had asked for. 2 fronts, 2 attorneys Devlin would need to retain. 2 sets of legal fees bleeding a man who was already leveraged past breathing room. By noon, Devlin Cross would know he was being sued. By tomorrow, he'd realize he couldn't afford the answer. Brendan leaned back in his chair and allowed himself one small smile. Then he called Israel. Both filed, he said. Clock's running. Good, Israel said. Nothing else. Israel made the second call at 11:15 that morning. He was standing in his kitchen, the same kitchen where Patrice had raised her middle finger, and walked out like she was leaving behind something small. He looked at the counter where the folder had sat. Clean now. Empty. He pulled up Carol Holloway's number. He had never deleted it. Some part of him had always known this call would come. She answered on the 4th ring. Israel. Surprise in her voice. Careful surprise. Carol. How are you? I'm fine, baby. She paused. He could hear her recalculating. They hadn't spoken in 5 months. She knew what this was. What's happened? Your daughter is about to make the worst decision of her life, Israel said. He kept his voice even. No drama, no performance, just the truth, plain and clear. I think you should be here. A long silence. Carol was 65 years old. She had lived through her own version of this. She had married a man all flash and no foundation, and he'd left her with a half-paid mortgage and a daughter who learned all the wrong lessons from watching. When? She asked. As soon as you can. I'll be there tonight. She arrived at 7. Israel opened the door, and Carol stepped inside, smaller than he remembered, her gray hair pulled back tight, her eyes sharp and searching. She hugged him. Brief, but real. The kind of hug that said, I'm sorry, without needing the words. He made her tea, set it on the kitchen table, sat across from her. Then he told her everything. The affair, 2 years, not months. The transfers, $47,000 moved to Devlin's LLC while Patrice was still sleeping in Israel's house, eating at Israel's table, spending Israel's money. The folder she'd found and misread. The divorce filing. The financial disclosure that revealed what Patrice had walked away from. Carol held her mug with both hands and did not interrupt. Not once. Her face shifted as he spoke. Small movements around her eyes, her mouth. But she let him finish. She let the full weight of it settle in the room like smoke. When he was done, the kitchen was quiet. The clock above the stove ticked. Outside, the evening had gone dark. Carol set her mug down. She looked at the table surface for a long moment. Then she looked up at Israel with eyes that carried something old and heavy. Something she'd been carrying for decades. "She did the same thing I always feared she would," Carol said quietly. Israel said nothing. There was nothing to say. The truth had been spoken, and it sat between them, undeniable. The divorce settlement conference was scheduled for the following week. The conference room was on the 14th floor of a glass tower on Peachtree Street. Long walnut table, 8 leather chairs, a wall of windows that looked out over downtown Atlanta, the morning sun cutting sharp lines across the carpet. Israel arrived first. He chose the chair at the far end of the table, back to the windows, face in shadow. Plain dark suit, white shirt, no tie, no watch, no cufflinks. Nothing on him that spoke. He set no papers on the table. He brought no briefcase. He folded his hands and waited. Brendan sat to his left, 2 folders in front of him, squared perfectly with the table's edge. A legal pad, a pen, nothing else. He did not make small talk. He did not need to. At 9:03 the door opened. Patrice's attorney entered first, Dana Whitfield, a tall woman in a charcoal blazer, her expression professionally neutral. She set her materials down at the opposite end of the table and arranged them with the efficiency of someone who had done this 1,000 times. Then Patrice. She wore a cream blouse and dark slacks, gold earrings, hair straightened and pulled back. She looked composed the way a cracked vase looks whole from a distance, the lines only visible when you got close. Her jaw was set too tight. Her hands moved too much. She sat without greeting anyone and placed her purse on the chair beside her like it was a shield. She did not look at Israel. Not once. The mediator, a retired judge named Harold Kinney, gray-haired and unhurried, opened the session at 9:07 with the standard framework. Ground rules, procedural expectations. Both parties acknowledged. Dana spoke first. She outlined Patrice's position with professional calm, the length of the marriage, 8 years, the standard of living maintained during that period, and the argument that Israel's extensive premarital wealth structuring constituted a form of financial concealment that should factor into equitable distribution. She was good, measured. She did not oversell it. Brendan waited until she finished. Then he opened his first folder. "Before we discuss distribution," Brendan said, "I need to enter the counter-motion into the record of this session." He slid copies across the table. 1 to Dana, 1 to the mediator, 1 placed gently in front of Patrice's empty hands. 3 transfers from the joint marital account, Brendan said. $12,000 on March 3rd, $18,500 on June 19th, $16,500 on September 2nd. All directed to Pinnacle South Development, LLC, a company controlled by Devlin Cross, a man with whom Mrs. Wade has maintained an extramarital relationship for over 2 years. The room did not move. Brendan continued. Under Georgia Code, Section 19-513, dissipation of marital assets during the period of marital breakdown is a recognized factor in equitable distribution. The total, $47,000, will be deducted from any settlement Mrs. Wade receives. Dana's face did not change. She had known this was coming. She had prepared Patrice. But preparation and experience are different things, and Patrice's hands went still on the table, like something inside her had locked. Dana responded carefully. She acknowledged the transfers, but reframed them as household financial management, an argument that was thin and everyone in the room knew it. Then she pivoted back to her primary position, that Israel's wealth structuring, maintained throughout the marriage without disclosure, constituted a pattern of concealment that disadvantaged her client. Mr. Wade maintained complex financial architecture for 8 years without his wife's knowledge, Dana said. That is relevant to equitable distribution. The mediator looked toward Israel's end of the table. Mr. Wade, would you like to respond? Brendan glanced at Israel. A small nod. Israel unfolded his hands. He looked directly at Dana, not at Patrice. His voice was low, even. The kind of quiet that makes people lean forward to hear. I never lied to my wife about anything, he said. She never asked. That is not concealment. That is a marriage where one person was paying attention and one person wasn't. The room went silent. Patrice's chin dropped a fraction of an inch. Her eyes fixed on the document in front of her. She did not look up. The mediator let the silence hold for 3 full seconds. Then he cleared his throat and moved the session into negotiation. It took 2 hours. Dana fought well. She was a good attorney earning her fee, but the ground beneath her was sand. The dissipation claim was documented. The premarital structuring was legal. Georgia law did not punish a man for being private. It punished a spouse for draining joint assets into a lover's pocket. The outcome: Patrice would receive a cash settlement of $2.4 million, significant by any ordinary measure. A fraction less than 1% of the full estate. The $47,000 was deducted. The marital home remained Israel's. All premarital assets, all holding structures, all trusts, untouched. The documents were prepared. Signatures required. Dana signed for procedural confirmation. Brendan signed. The mediator signed. Patrice picked up the pen. Her hand was steady. She made it steady. She signed her name in the space provided. She set the pen down, collected her purse, and stood. She did not look at Israel. She walked out of the conference room behind Dana, her heels clicking once, twice, 3 times on the hardwood, before the carpet of the hallway swallowed the sound. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Brendan gathered his folders. He looked at Israel, gave one small nod, the kind that carried years of friendship and professional satisfaction compressed into a single gesture, and left. The mediator followed, murmuring something polite about the restroom. Israel sat alone. The conference room was quiet. The sun had shifted during the 2 hours, and now it fell directly across the walnut table, warming the wood, illuminating the space where the documents had been signed. The city moved 14 floors below. Traffic, people, noise, all of it distant and irrelevant. Israel sat for a long moment. His hands were folded again. His breathing was even. His face held nothing anyone could read. Then he stood. He buttoned his jacket, one button, the middle one, and pushed his chair in flush with the table. He walked to the door, opened it, and stepped into the hallway without looking back. The living room was dim. One lamp on the side table, its shade throwing warm yellow light across the hardwood and leaving the corners in shadow. The curtains were drawn. The house smelled faintly of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. Patrice sat on the edge of the sofa, the same sofa she had picked out 4 years ago from a showroom in Buckhead. Her posture was rigid. Her purse was on her lap, like she was waiting for a bus. She had come because her mother asked. She had not expected Aunt Ruth to be there. Settled in the armchair by the bookshelf, quiet as furniture, watching everything. Carol Holloway sat across from her daughter in the accent chair by the window. She was 65. Her hands were clasped in her lap. Her face carried the particular stillness of a woman who had rehearsed nothing and prepared everything. Israel was not in the room. He had opened the front door for Carol and Patrice, said good evening to both, and walked down the hallway toward the back of the house without another word. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Carol said, "I'm not here to fix anything." Patrice's eyes moved to her mother's face, waiting. "There's nothing left to fix," Carol continued. "That's done. The papers are signed. I'm here because there's something I should have told you 20 years ago, and I didn't, and that's on me. Patrice's jaw tightened. "Mama!" "Don't." Carol's voice was not loud. It was final. "You're going to listen. For once in your life, you're going to sit there and hear something true." The lamp hummed faintly. Ruth did not move. Carol leaned forward, her elbows on her knees. "I did what you did. You know that. You were 12. Your father was steady. He was kind. He came home every night. And I looked at him and thought, this is it? This is all there is? So I found someone louder. Someone who drove something shiny and talked big in rooms full of people." She paused. "And I left. And you know what happened after." Patrice said nothing. She knew. "I ended up in a 2-bedroom apartment off Lamar with nothing but what I could carry." Carol said, "And the man I left your father for? Gone in 8 months. Didn't even call to say goodbye. Just stopped showing up." She straightened. "I raised you on what I could scrape together after that. And somewhere in all those years of scraping, I taught you the wrong thing. I taught you that a man's worth was in how he looked to other people. I taught you to want noise." Patrice's eyes were wet. She blinked it back. Her fingers pressed white against her purse. "But here's what I came to say." Carol's voice dropped. Not softer, heavier. "Devlin called me last week." Patrice's head came up. "Not you," Carol said. "Me. He called me. Looking for Israel's phone number. Said he had a business opportunity he wanted to discuss." Carol let that settle. "Your man, the one you're with now, called your mother to get your husband's number. He wasn't checking on you. He wasn't asking about you. He was still trying to get to Israel." The room was absolutely still. Patrice opened her mouth, closed it. Her lips pressed together in a line so tight the color left them. "Think about that," Carol said. "Sit with it. Because I can't make you see it if you won't look." She stood. Slowly. Her knees protested, and she let them. "Israel loved you," Carol said, looking down at her daughter. "Not because you earned it. Because that's who he is. That's what he does. And you walked out that door and put your finger up at him like he was nobody." Her voice did not waver. "And now you know who he is. And you have to carry that. Every single day. You have to know what you had and what you did to it." Patrice did not move. Carol picked up her coat from the arm of the sofa. She looked at Ruth. A brief nod. The kind shared between women who understand each other without explanation, and walked down the hallway toward the guest room. Patrice sat for another 30 seconds. Then she stood, pulled her purse strap over her shoulder, and walked to the front door. She opened it. She stepped through. She pulled it closed behind her without a sound. No goodbye. No defense. Nothing. The house settled into quiet. Ruth sat in the armchair, listening to the faint sound of a car engine starting outside, then pulling away. She waited until the sound was gone. Then she looked toward the hallway. Israel stood in the doorway to the kitchen, leaning against the frame. His arms were crossed. His face was unreadable. Ruth studied him for a long moment. "You all right?" she asked. Israel looked at her. The faintest shift moved through his expression. Not a smile, not relief, but something settled. Something that had been settled for longer than tonight. "I've been all right," he said. "I've been all right for a while now." 6 months later, the kitchen table was different. The coffee was the same. Black, no sugar, poured before the son had any say in the matter. But the table was wide plank walnut, reclaimed from a barn in North Georgia. The window above the sink looked out over 11 acres of land that rolled gently toward a tree line of old-growth oaks. No neighbors close enough to see. No streetlights, just land and sky, and the deep quiet of a man who had finally built the house around the life he actually wanted. Israel Wade sat at that table at 5:30 a.m. with a document in front of him. The letter of intent was 12 pages, clean language, clear terms. A regional freight network. 18 trucks, 3 distribution hubs, contracts with 4 municipalities across the Southeast. The company was family-owned, second generation, and the founders were ready to retire. They had come to Israel through a broker who knew someone who knew Brendan. The price was fair. The infrastructure was sound. The growth potential was the kind of thing Israel could see 3 moves ahead on, the way he always had. He read it through twice, not because he needed to, because he enjoyed it. The house was quiet around him, no tension in the quiet now, no absence shaped like another person, just space. His space. The floorboards didn't creak with someone else's disappointment. The air didn't carry the weight of being seen wrong. He set the document down and picked up his coffee, took a slow drink, let the warmth settle. 14 miles away, in a rented 2-bedroom condo on Peachtree Street in Midtown, Patrice Wade, she had not yet changed her name back, though the reason for keeping it shifted weekly in her own mind, was already awake. Not by choice. She had a 9 o'clock meeting at the marketing firm where she'd been working for 3 months. Entry-level was too generous a word for the position. It was the kind of job she would have mocked 4 years ago, back when Israel's quiet income covered everything, and she had the luxury of calling herself between projects. Her settlement funds were not gone, but they were going, faster than she had planned. The condo was expensive, Atlanta was expensive, and Devlin was no longer contributing to anything. They were still together, on paper, in proximity. He came by twice a week, sometimes 3 times, but the visits had a quality to them now that reminded Patrice, in moments she refused to examine too closely, of a man looking for something in a room he'd already searched. He was distracted, irritable. His phone rang constantly with calls he didn't answer in front of her. The Bentley had been repossessed in February. He told her it was a lease transition. She had seen the tow truck from the window of his apartment. She said nothing. There was nothing to say that wouldn't crack the surface of everything she'd built her decision on. His civil suit, the one Israel's team filed for fraudulent misrepresentation, was grinding forward. 2 investors pulled out of Devlin's remaining development project after the filing became public. The Atlanta real estate community was not large. People talked. People remembered. Doors that used to open with a handshake now required appointments that never got returned. Devlin Cross was not ruined. Not yet. But he was shrinking. Week by week. Deal by deal. Contact by contact. The trajectory was the kind that didn't reverse. Patrice could see it. She had always been good at seeing trajectories in other people, just never in herself. Israel set his coffee mug down. He picked up his pen, a plain black ballpoint, the same kind he'd used for 20 years, and turned to the signature page of the letter of intent. He signed his name, steady, unhurried, the same way he did everything. He set the pen down, pulled his phone from the table's edge, and dialed. 2 rings. "Morning, baby," Aunt Ruth said. Her voice was warm and immediate, the way it always was, as if she'd been waiting by the phone just to hear him breathe. "Morning," Israel said. He leaned back in his chair. Through the window, the sky was turning, deep blue giving way to amber along the tree line. The oaks stood black against it, patient as monuments. "How you doing?" "I'm fine. How you doing?" Israel looked at the signed document on the table. He looked at the land through the glass. He felt the quiet of a house that belonged to him completely. Every board, every beam, every silence. "Better than I've ever been," he said. Ruth was quiet for a moment. Then she said, soft and sure, the way only she could, "I know. I always knew." Israel smiled. Small. Real. He set the phone down on the walnut table. The sun broke over his land, spreading gold across the grass, warming the glass, filling the kitchen with the kind of light that doesn't ask anything of you. The letter of intent sat signed beside his coffee. The empire continued, quiet and deep. And the ledger, the one that had always told the truth, the one that never needed anyone else to read it, was very, very good. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.